particular week that you want to drive up the East Coast happens to be the week that Cyclone Alfred is going to hit the East Coast.
Hi and welcome to our first ever YouTube video. We are known as the Unconventional Family on TikTok and Instagram, and we have been wanting to do long videos for a very long time.
And we thought, what better time than now? We have just narrowly avoided the incoming Cyclone Alfred in Brisbane, and we're going to dive into more about how we ended up there in the first place and why we decided to just cut our losses and get out of there.
So we have wanted to move to Australia for the longest time, and finally we had a couple of opportunities which came over, had this whole plan set out. We booked all accommodation, we booked everything and paid for up front. It didn't go to plan.
We spent 3 days in Sydney, we hired a car, which low-key wish we'd got an Uber now, because I'm pretty sure over that 3 days I've probably accumulated thousands of dollars in fines.
You're going to get deported because you are literally the worst driver ever known in Sydney.
I'm not sure. I expected it to be similar to the UK because it's on the left-hand side, but the roads are so confusing and I'm not sure when you're allowed to turn left, when you aren't. I nearly killed several pedestrians several times, but
he didn't kill anyone. He didn't hit anyone. There was no hit and runs.
It was nice and it was beautiful. We were very lucky with the weather as well. It was 28 to 30 degrees and we went to see the Opera House. We went by the Botanical Gardens. We got the ferry over to Manly Beach.
Ellie, come here. Something funny actually happened when we were on Manly Beach, and I just wanted to get Ellie to tell you herself because it's not going to be the same if we say.
I picked up a jellyfish.
And how did that happen?
I thought it was like sea glass or something.
It did.
And then I felt it was like all squidgy.
Then you threw it.
All I heard was, "What's this?" Ugh. I was like, what was that? We looked down and it was a blue bottle jellyfish, luckily very dead, and no tentacles came into contact with Ellie because we found out that you could actually still get stung even after they're dead, which is frightening.
I was like, Ellie, please do not pick stuff up. It was kind of too late. She went, oh, what's this? And I was like, do not touch anything in Australia. Don't pick anything up. And then with that, she was like, it's squidgy. They were everywhere though, weren't they?
Yeah.
They literally looked like those blue sandwich bags you get. I don't know if you've ever seen the magic bubbles, the blue ones when you blow them up. I don't know if you've seen them, but that is what these jellyfish look like.
And then strolling along the beach, about 30 seconds later, suddenly we go, what is that? And what do we see?
A pufferfish.
Pufferfish. Very dead, but he looked very pleased about it, didn't he?
You're going to have to put a picture up of him.
Yeah, I'll pop a picture
Happy
up of that happy dead pufferfish. So all in all, Sydney was a great experience.
We booked 3 nights in the Mercure in Sydney and it was lovely. I think it was like a bit of a rough street.
I think it was very central, so...
The hotel itself was actually really nice.
And we never felt unsafe, which was nice.
So we'd booked the camper then to pick up from Sydney and drop off in Brisbane a week later. So we went ahead, picked up the camper van in Sydney. Everything was going really smoothly, wasn't it?
It was. We got the camper and we were all quite excited. It was so off the cuff.
Like us, normally, we would just fly because we'd be like, oh,
We'd get a hotel. We are creatures of comfort. But it was something we wanted to experience and we wanted to give the kids a chance to experience.
Well, look, we are in Australia and we have wanted to get to Australia for so long, and our visa is taking forever, and that's something that we will do loads of videos on. It's the one opportunity for us right now to get here and experience as much as we could. So that's why we decided to do the camper van in the first place. See more, do more, experience more, and just get out of our comfort zone a little bit. And it went to
So after we picked up the camper, I think it was Newcastle, we stopped in, and it was somewhere called the Gateway Inn. Which, again, it was nice. It really was. It was huge as well. We booked a room, but it turned out to be 2 conjoined rooms. And the space was great. The receptionist was incredibly friendly and helpful.
So that was our first night.
So we decided we're going to get up early, we'll get some breakfast, get on the road, because it was a long day the next day. We were heading up to Byron Bay, somewhere that I've wanted to go since I was about 15. And then... that was 6.5 hours, I think.
I think it was 6 hours,
10 minutes.
We did toy with stopping at like Coffs Harbour or Port
Macquarie. Well,
Port Macquarie.
see, I always thought it was Macquarie, but Macquarie is how everyone else
The
pronounced
Aussies
it that we
say
spoke to. Yeah. Port Macquarie, mate.
Port Macquarie. And we did. When we drove through, we were like, oh, do we stop here? Do we break up that journey a bit more? And we were like, nah, let's just carry on.
Yeah, we were about 3 hours up. It was perfectly kind of halfway between Newcastle and Byron Bay. So it made sense until we were driving and the girls were being so well behaved. We thought, let's just get this stint done. We'll do 2 nights in Byron and then we can carry on up to the Gold Coast.
It was also, we had to be in Byron Bay by 7 p.m. latest for check-in. And the day, just because it was 6.5 hours nearly, we were stopping for food on the way and we had to refuel. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah. So with the camper van, they had said make sure it never goes below 1/4 of a tank. We'd already refilled about 2.5 hours into the journey. So anyway, it got to this point, it got to 1/4 of a tank. You had a look, didn't you? It was like 100 kilometres away. We were like...
104 kilometres. I was like, what?
With that, the tank suddenly goes, beep, reserve fuel. And I was like, what do we do? How much is reserve fuel? How far is that going to get us? So I got onto the range and it said about 67 kilometres. And I was like, we're not going to make it. I don't know if you've seen In-Betweeners.
In-Betweeners too, where they're just dehydrating.
And they end up breaking down. Granted, it was a lot busier where we were. We didn't want to break down on the highway in 30 degrees with no air conditioning. And we had stocked up, but we were low on water. So we called the emergency line for the camper van. It's the Aussie attitude, I love it. Tiff explained the whole situation. She's like, we're on this much fuel, we're on the highway, we can't find the nearest fuel station. We think it's about this far away. Do you think we'll make it? I don't know.
Luckily though, he did then track us. So
Yeah.
he asked for our unit number and said, I'm going to track your route to see if you break down now.
So for whatever reason, Google Maps hasn't done us that well. It wasn't picking up these kind of small local petrol stations.
It's trying to get off the highway because once you're on the highway, all you see around you is just these huge, tall trees forever.
Yeah.
And you can't get off these highways. There is nowhere to go because for so much of the journey, there is nothing around you. There are no towns. There is no civilization. You are just driving and covering all these miles.
In the UK, you have a junction every 5-6 miles.
Absolutely.
You can come off.
It's not like that in Oz. Oh my God, I actually thought I was going to die. This panic just came over me. I just had these thoughts of us being stuck on this highway, and as soon as the van went off, like, it was so hot in there. It was like a greenhouse.
It did heat up immediately. And I'm not usually one to panic, but even I at this point was a bit like, I said to you, didn't I? I was like, I feel a bit dizzy, to be honest. I was like, what are we actually going to do if this happens?
But this guy who then tracked our journey to make sure we were okay. But again, it's one of those, how quickly could they actually get someone to us? Because we are in the middle of nowhere.
We came off and it was such a unique experience.
It was about 37 kilometres, wasn't it?
The tank said 67 kilometres, then very rapidly jumped down to 50 and then went to red and basically said get to fuel. We took it down to 75, 80 kilometres an hour. We were kind of trundling along and we finally got off and we got into this little town and it was like something out of a movie. It kind of had just this one quaint little church, just a couple of people out mowing their front lawns.
Like one of these horror movies.
It even had like that kind of industrial bit as well, where it's like that's where they're going to put the bodies.
Yeah, that's where we die. This is the end.
Luckily, you kind of round this corner and there's this cute little town, this cute little strip, and the fuel station.
Which also looked...
It did look a little like we were going to die, but
yes.
Swung the van around, whipped it in, refueled.
Do you know what? That moment, I think it had just gone past 6 p.m. I was like, what if it's closed? Because, like, what do we do? And there was one part of me that's like, at least we're not just going to be stuck on the side of a highway for hours. We are in a town. Even if we had to find, like, a motel or something 5 minutes away, at least there was an element of safety there.
The funniest bit for me was I pulled up to the pump and I just had to take a second and I sat there and just went... And then Tiff goes, what are you doing? I cannot rest until there's fuel in this vehicle.
Get the diesel in now. It was that moment where he picked up this nozzle, put the nozzle in. Finally. And I saw the numbers on the pump, like 0. I was like, yes, they're definitely open. And then I saw this fuel, like the money start going up on the meter. I was like, yes, there's diesel, yay.
And to be honest, diesel here is so cheap. Like, I think it was 171.
Who are you?
171. Sorry,
Aussie already, mate.
Yeah, 171, mate. But it was 171, which works out 88p per litre, which is ridiculous. Then we could get back on the road, and that's when we started being able to think about what to do next.
Yeah.
So we were a little behind schedule, which meant we couldn't make one or two of the tourist routes that we wanted to do, so just go past and see. But we did stop at
Sambuca Heads,
stretch our legs. Stunning place. I think it's like a boating lake. I thought it was a beach, but it was a nice.
They had those
boating
huge
lake.
herons on there, which
I've never seen one in real life. I didn't realise how big they were.
Like they were in the distance. I dread to think how big they were.
They looked like pedalos, didn't they?
Yeah.
It sounds insane, but I genuinely had no idea how large those birds were.
No, I didn't.
So we stopped off there. That was beautiful, and we carried on. And probably about an hour and a half out from Byron, you saw some news that you'd seen earlier in the week.
Yeah, I can't even remember what happened, to be honest. Something popped up.
I think you saw some weather warnings
Maybe
because you started rattling off weather warning after weather warning. I was like...
Earlier in the week, I'd seen something about a cyclone, and I thought it was like historic because it said 3 days ago or something on TikTok, and it said it moved away. So I was like, okay, it's fine. I didn't think anything else of it. So what were we at this point? Like 4.5, 5 hours into the drive up to Byron. I see something, I can't remember what it was, whether it was a TikTok or the weather, like Sam said, and I just suddenly went, oh no, this cyclone wasn't historic and it's imminent, it's going to hit. So we then started, the whole journey then became about what do we do? Because we've just driven from a safe place down in Newcastle where that's not going to be hit. And we have just driven 5 hours away from what's safe up towards a cyclone. And we're from the UK. We have never experienced anything like it. And even the floods in Brisbane are crazy sometimes. And if you live there, it's fine. And if we were to move there, then we would learn and educate about what to do in those situations. But when you are driving up in a camper van with 2 kids and you're meant to be staying by the coast where there's a hurricane or cyclone imminent.
We had to make some quick decisions, didn't we?
Yeah.
And one was, let's make it to Byron. We'll stick it out there for the night and then we'll drive straight on up to Brisbane, drop the camper back early, stay with your cousin. Pretty much at that moment, we get a message, I tested positive for COVID.
Yeah.
And we're like, right, so we can't stay with your cousin.
Yeah, they didn't want us to go and stay and infect us all and get us ill.
And then we see the news that actually Byron is going to be just unsafe. We looked at the weather for Byron and obviously the cyclone wasn't there yet, but it was forecasted to be windy, rainy, cold, and it's like, what are we going to gain from staying there when we basically would have had to just sit in the rain, wait till the next day and then drive in more rain?
Well, I think it's worth noting as well, this was the Sunday and the cyclone was predicted to hit like late Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, somewhere around that. They just said later half of the week because they weren't quite sure. So actually the cyclone was getting closer and closer. So it started getting windier and windier on the drive. We started seeing a lot of cloud cover coming in, some rain. It said that this cyclone was going to come closer like Sunday, Monday, and then head back out before, like for Tuesday, and then come back in with a vengeance, towards the end of the week.
We'd settled that we would just keep on driving. It was a long day, but we decided we're going to drive straight up to Brisbane, so we're there and nothing can disrupt getting that van back safely.
Yeah, the van had to go back to Brisbane because we couldn't just ditch that van and run. That's where my cousin lives as well, so it kind of just felt like the safest option.
10 hours of driving that day, it was long. The girls, I can't put into words how well behaved our girls were. They didn't have any screen time.
No.
They didn't even ask for screen time. They did admit that they got bored at times, but they had a competition on who could flip a bottle the most.
Were
and they bottle flipped for in excess of 6 hours.
Maybe 4.
Maybe 4. But I don't know. I mean, the rest of it was chatting, picking songs.
They were teaching each other Chinese and Korean.
Ellie's learning Korean, Lexi's learning Chinese. They decided to kind of exchange languages. It was just so wholesome and took the weight off massively, because any parents watching can appreciate if you've got kids that are restless and irritable, it makes a high stress situation far, far worse. But for us, that space to just get our heads straight without having to worry.
The thing is, our kids they are really understanding as well.
We then decided in Brisbane we couldn't stay with your cousin because he had COVID, and we couldn't book a campground because it was past check-in. So we went to
the Glen. It was really nice.
It was lovely to turn up to. Again, everyone was so hospitable, so friendly.
Yeah,
the Brizzy bunch are a happy bunch.
They're so nice and friendly. Sarcastic. If you can't handle sarcasm, it's not for you, because we literally
couldn't take a thing they said seriously. But it was just everything we needed after the day we had. The girls had some special mocktails, and we kind of all just looked back at the day and laughed and discussed it with some of the staff there, and they found it hilarious. It was a nice evening after a mental day. So we holed up there, and it was another lovely room. It was it was 2 king beds next to each other, wasn't it?
It was just
Which just meant we were all close.
Yeah, great food as well. Really good food.
The food was really good.
Really nice.
Really nice.
Everything we needed after not really eating for the whole day.
If you go to the Glen Hotel in Brisbane, highly recommend the brisket pizza. That was delicious.
So after dinner and everything, we went back to the hotel, which is where we decided we needed to make some really quick decisions on what we were going to do. I mean, that hotel was so lovely. We even discussed just holding out there and staying there for a few days while it passed. But, you know, like a lot of the people in Brisbane weren't so worried about the cyclone. And my cousin was like, oh, you're lucky you get to experience this. They're just chilled.
They're crazy laid back.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll be right. Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm all right.
But regardless of how strong the cyclone was going to be, obviously safety was our number one priority. But second to that was, what were we going to do for potentially up to a week while this cyclone came, and there could be flash floods. Public transport would be out. We wouldn't be able to drive anywhere. Shops could literally be submerged. 2 years ago, Brisbane City was underwater because there was so much flooding. So it's the beaches, you couldn't go near the beaches. So we were we're going to be sat in a hotel for 4 or 5 days if we stay here.
We didn't want to tarnish our first impressions of Brisbane and the Gold Coast, which is a place we'd always dreamed of visiting, of living potentially. And we didn't want it to have that kind of overshadow. Obviously, we know if that's where you're going to live, that's going to happen.
I'd like to add, though, this is the first cyclone that's about to hit Brisbane in 50 years. Yeah. Okay, they have horrific floods and strong winds and storms a lot of the time, but this is the first cyclone for nearly 50 years.
I mean, they deal with everything so well. They're the most chilled out, positive people. Anyway, we decided, we looked at the weather for different places. We looked at flight options, and we settled on visiting Melbourne for a week to kind of let the cyclone do its thing, see how everything played out, and get a place here for a week where it was forecast to be 30 degrees and sunny.
Perfect.
But also something that we thought was unheard of in Melbourne. We really thought the weather was more unpredictable here, and we may be unpleasantly surprised.
It was a 2-hour 20 flight to Melbourne, so we were perfect, not too far.
Flew with Qantas, everything was included, luggage, hand luggage, personal item.
Really good experience with Qantas. We decided late on the Sunday night, booked the flights, called the camper van company on the Monday morning because it had been the weekend, and just said, look, we're dropping this van off 5 days early. So we lost all the money for the camper van, we lost all the money for the campsites that we had already booked and paid for. We just dropped this camper van back. Then we headed straight to the airport.
We'd never done a domestic flight before, so none of us could wrap our heads around the fact that we didn't need passports, and bag drop was self-service. That was incredibly quick. Security, there were no queues. It was
easy. I think this is the thing.
Nice,
it was nice, but it was windy. The winds were picking up, so I think it was 35 miles an hour gusts.
Yeah.
It was okay though. It was a bit bumpy going up, as to be expected. It wasn't that windy. Planes know what they're doing.
Yeah. It was a great experience. The crew were great, the food was great, the drinks were great, and it was over. It was over before you even realised. Yeah. I mean, we have spent over the last 3 weeks, we've done about 21 hours of flying. So a 2.5-hour flight was a doddle. That was nice.
So at the airport, I was just looking at Airbnbs, where we were going to stay. We're so used to this. This isn't our first rodeo. It doesn't faze us anymore. We could have turned up in Melbourne with nowhere to stay, and we would have found somewhere to stay. So we weren't that worried. As long as we can find a nice place to put our heads down, then we're happy. I managed to find this really, really lovely Airbnb, and it cost us £600 for the week, and it's in
outrageous.
Such a good location.
It's in the Docklands, right next to the quay. The views are stunning. The place, they've thought of everything.
Everything.
But genuinely, everything that we've been oh, do they have that? From past experiences with Airbnbs, and everything that we've thought of, they have. It's just so nice to know that we have a place after a crazy couple of weeks where us and the girls can just settle down, we can unpack, we can get the washing done, just chill out and enjoy a bit of Australia.
Well, it's nice because we weren't planning on coming to Melbourne during this trip, so the fact that we get to experience another part of Australia is actually a blessing as well. So the cyclone still hasn't hit in Brisbane and they are just waiting for it. It looks like it is going to take quite a nasty turn. My cousin said to me, hold out until Tuesday until you know whether it's definitely going to make landfall. But I'm glad we didn't, because I looked at flight prices for tomorrow and they are extortionate.
Basically, airlines are saying we will make other arrangements, your flight will probably be cancelled.
Yeah, so from Thursday, the flight prices went back down again, but that's because they know they're not going to be flying on Thursday. They know that it's all going to be cancelled. They just want you to book because it looks cheap. Yeah. And then they'll rearrange it.
We know we made the best decision and we wouldn't regret it even if the weather didn't turn and it wasn't bad. And we really hope that it doesn't take a bad turn and it doesn't cause much damage.
We're lucky at the end of the day because we could just fly off. We might have lost the money on the camper van, probably well over £1,000 that we've lost, and then the additional hotel stays that we've had to pay for, like with the flights as well, it's probably up £1,500 that we've had to spend. All in all, we're £2,500 down, which isn't great, but I'm thankful that A, we prioritise our safety, and B, we have that opportunity to just do a runner, because all those people that live there, they can't do that and their homes are at risk and their animals, and it is scary. So we're grateful that we've just lost some money. So we're due to fly back to Brisbane in a week. We booked a return flight. We need to see it in all its glory and we have to go back there for a certain opportunity. And we left loads of stuff at my cousin's house. Yeah. So we need to go back and get that anyway. So yeah, we just drove straight into a cyclone.
And flew straight back out. But we're looking forward to exploring a bit more of Melbourne. So far, it's been lovely. Great weather. Great food again.
Yeah, Melbourne seems lovely. We haven't been out and about because I did loads of washing today and the kids have been doing schoolwork.
So we're going to start putting out more videos on things like visa processes and different areas we've been to, things we've experienced, things we've done. Yeah. So stay tuned, subscribe.
Yeah, please subscribe.
And if you enjoy our story, hit the like button.
What would you have done in our situation? Would you have just braved the cyclone? That's what my cousin kept saying. He was like, you should feel privileged that you get to be here during a cyclone and you get to experience it. And it's like, but that's why I didn't want to experience that. What would you have done? Let us know in the comments. Do check out our Instagram and TikTok so that you can see other bits that we've done.
And we'll leave a link to the Airbnb below as well, because if you're ever in Melbourne, this is the place to stay. It is honestly stunning, convenient, brilliant.
On that note, we will just leave links for everywhere that we've mentioned in the video.
Yeah, thanks so much. See you on the next video.
Thank you for watching.
Bye.
Bye.